The folks who were up in the box that night, Mr. and Mrs. Lincoln, their guests Clara Harris and Major Rathbone. All those lives are forever affected, and all of those lives end tragically. Most importantly, of course, Abe Lincoln. Good look at him as one of the last casualties of the Civil War. Over 700,000 American combat-related deaths. That's the equivalent to all American casualties in the Revolution War of 1812, Mexican-American, Spanish-American War, World War I, II, Korea, Vietnam, Cold War, Panama, Persian Gulf, Lebanon, Somalia, Haiti, Grenada, Bosnia, Iraq, Afghanistan, Persian Gulf together. That's how many people died in that war. Now, at the start of this war are two main figures, Abe Lincoln, Wilkes Booth, both of them already famous. Everybody knows Lincoln, of course. Perry lawyer, politician. He was a man who was always underestimated. Everybody's third or fourth choice for the nomination. And you know, of course, who became president. Wilkes Booth, though, is already famous as well. He's not just any actor. A lot of you know he was an actor, but he was a big star. So everybody already knows who he was. Back then there's Brews, Barrymores, and Booths, and he's a Booth. His father's famous, his brothers, the whole family. It'd be like being a Fonda or a Sheen now. The whole family is very well known. Now at the start of the war on both sides, they're thinking 3-4 months tops for the war. In the North and the West, they're going, we have twice as many people, we have all the factories. Confederacy has no chance at all. In the South, for different reasons, they're thinking the same thing. They're going to people in the West and the North, they're fighting to end slavery, they're fighting to keep the Union together, and those are ideas. And in the end, they're not going to be willing to die for those things, but they were. So that war will go on 4 very bloody years. Now, one of the first big battles, not that far from here, about 33 miles west, out at Manassas, sometimes referred to as Bull Run. And to give you some idea how they're thinking at the start of the war, people actually went out to watch the battle with picnics and blankets like a football game. You know, honestly, I had no idea what was about to happen. They're thinking maybe a couple dozen people might get hurt. As you know, of course, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds die out there. And they're going to start to find out what this war is really going to be like. Among the people who were affected, the family of Wilmer McLean. McLean's had a house out on the battlefield, and things were so bad when it was over, they decided they were moving away, somewhere where the Civil War is never going to find them again. Now let's have some history experts in the audience, so some of you already know where they went. For the folks who don't, though, they're going to move to Appomattox Courthouse. Guess where General Lee surrenders to General Grant? At Appomattox. And not just at Appomattox, but at their house. So the war is essentially starting at their house, it's ending at their house. Civil War is not quite over, it has about 2.5 more months to run, but this is the beginning of the end with Lee's surrender. The handwriting is on the wall and everybody knows it. The South has lost the war. That's April 9th, 1865. When that news gets back here to Washington, this becomes Party Town, USA. Really does. Parades, fireworks, people actually dancing out in the street, they're so happy. And the celebrating goes on all week. April 14th, they're still celebrating, including over at the White House and the President. Abraham and Mary go for a carriage ride that morning, and Lincoln remarks that he feels that's the first day that the war was over. Also that day, the American flag goes back up over Fort Sumter. It had gone down exactly 4 years before the same day. Another thing that day that happens, the Lincolns decide they'd like to go to the theater. Lincoln loves to laugh, he loves to read, he loves to go to the theater. There's a play showing in town, a British comedy called American Cousin. That sounded like a nice thing to do. It takes Lincoln's mind off the war. So I decided to go see that play, which is showing in this theater on this stage. Now, as a courtesy to the Fords who run the theater, 3 Ford brothers, the White House is going to send messengers over so they could get ready. The Ford brothers, where the theater gets its name from. Now, the Fords are very happy about this. Big honor, victorious president coming to their theater. That's a great thing. They like that a lot. One other thing, though, that makes them happy, this is Good Friday. This happens over Easter vacation. That usually wouldn't be a big day for box office at the theater. They might have expected 300 or 400 people. Probably we have about 250 in here now. And this is going to be one of the stranger things you hear, but it's absolutely true. Right now, if we filled every seat in here, 654 people. Back then, if the theater was completely full, 2,200. 1,600 seats, 600 standing. So there was 1,700 people in here that night. So for every person you're looking at, think about 7 times that many. Much smaller people and obviously much smaller chairs. This theater is exactly the same size. So Ford's busy getting the theater ready, including the boxes. If you look over here, it's how the boxes usually look. No decorations, no special chairs. You notice the divider is in the middle, so you could get 2 groups in there. And if you look over here where the president is sitting, decorations, have special chairs. You notice the divider's still there, but it's pushed back, so Lincolns would have more space. We do, by the way, try to call that a box. We try to avoid the use of the term booth. You might want to think about that a little. And the George Washington picture. People are always wondering about that. Why on earth is there a picture of George Washington? That's instead of a presidential seal. Those already exist, but they're big and bulky, not the little ones now you can just kind of stick up. Back then, there's a lot of pictures of George Washington, and in the 1800s, nothing said president like George Washington. So that's indicating the office, and that is the same picture. It is the artifact. So they're busy getting the theater ready. Who walks into the back? But John Wolfe's booth. He's here to pick up his mail. Actors did that a lot at theaters because they traveled around. And the White House messengers already had been here in the theater, so everybody is talking about the president coming. Well, Wilkes Booth is very famous as an actor. What he wasn't so well known as was a Southern sympathizer. But he was. He'd basically been working for the Confederacy the entire war, had pretty much been after Lincoln for the entire war, had tried to attack Lincoln before, wants to do it again. He's just looking for opportunity. And here's Lincoln coming to Ford's Theater. So it's the perfect trap. Theater he works in, a play that he's done before. So as they're getting ready, so as Booth starts to plan out for that night, goes down there in the orchestra pit, finds a broken piece of wood. He's going to take that up to the box area. If you look up there again, in front of the boxes on either side, there's about an 8-foot hallway with doors at either end. He's going to take the piece of wood up there and leave it for later on. His plan when he attacks is not to go back through the audience. 1,700 Lincoln supporters, really bad idea. The plan is always to jump down on the stage, run out the back, where he's going to have a horse waiting. He's going to take that piece of wood up there and leave it for later on. He's going to use that to lock the door. Has it planned out pretty good, even to when he's going to attack, which is 10:15 at night. That's a deliberate time. That's late in the play, 3rd act. Booth knows only 1 actor on the stage at that time. There's not that many people out in the street because it's later. And also there's a very funny line in the play. It's not so funny anymore, But in 1865, socologizing old man trap was about the funniest thing you'd ever heard. And Booth knows the whole audience is going to be laughing at that. He was right. He's going to use that noise to cover the gunshot. So he has things planned out pretty good. Off Booth goes to contact his other conspirators. Remember, Booth's not acting alone. This is definitely conspiracy. It's pre-planned. There's more than one person. There's at least 10 conspirators, possibly more. Also, Lincoln's not the only target. If they could, President, Vice President, Secretary of State, War, Navy, Speaker of the House, President of the Senate, General Grant. Conceivably, they could have killed 8 people that night. As that works out, that part doesn't work out too good for him. Remember, it's Easter holiday. A lot of the people are out of town. And if they can get Lincoln, not get the others, Lincoln, of course, is always the main target. They will attack Seward, though, who's the Secretary of State, over at his house. It was at about 8 blocks away. He's going to be stabbed several times. He almost dies as well. The next morning, the papers have Lincoln and Seward near death. Seward survives. How do we know that? What does he do about 2 years later? Anybody? Yeah, he buys Alaska, what they call Seward's Folly. So he's going to survive the attack. So Booth's off planning, White House, they're having that nice day I talked about. Remember, Lincoln's still president, he's still pretty busy, so he starts to running late. The play is going to start on time, about 8 o'clock, and the Lincolns won't get here till about 8:30. Remember, they have to pick up their guests. But about 8:30, the carriage comes down 10th Street, out they come into the theater. Lincoln, being the nice person that he is, doesn't want to disturb the audience, so he's going to try to sneak in. Now, one thing Lincoln is very bad at, sneaking in, number 6'4", stovepipe hat. Pretty much, if you're up here, as soon as he walked in, the actor saw him, stop the play, had the band play Hail to the Chief, the whole audience gets up, and they're clapping for about 5 minutes. Eventually, though, they make it into the box, play starts up again. Booth's not here yet, wouldn't really need to get here till a little after 9. Remember, he has a very specific time when he's going to attack. But he shows up at the back of the theater. Now, when he comes in, he is going to sneak in, because they don't want anybody to know he has a horse out back, because they might ask why. Comes in the back easier than you might think. There's a play going on, there's sets and everything. He'll get over to the south side of the theater, he looks around, things look pretty much okay. And once he's in the theater, does he need to sneak around? No, he's Booth the actor. They kind of expect to see him in a theater. So everything's okay. Off Booth goes next door to the Star Saloon. He's going to be over there about a half hour. He's going to after he checks things out here, he needs to relax a bit. So he's going to over there and have a couple of drinks. Now it's getting near 10 o'clock though. He needs to get back over here. So Booth starts to head out of the bar. As he goes out the door, one of the people in the bar yells out to him, "Hey Booth, you're not half the actor your father was." To which Booth replies, "After tonight, I'll be the most famous person in America." And then back over here, in through the theater doors, up the circular steps, around the back of the balcony to the door. And when he gets there, security stops him, right? Wrong. One guard, a policeman named Parker. We know where Parker wasn't. He's not at the door. We think probably he's either watching the play or that he went over to the Star Saloon. So no guard at the door. It gets confusing because there was a person at the door, Forbes, White House messenger. He's at the door, but remember, he's not there to guard anything. He's there if the president had a message. Nice if he stopped Booth, he didn't. So when Booth goes through the door, remember the piece of wood? Booth now puts it behind the door. He can't be followed. And he's just waiting in there a couple of minutes to attack. Now all the assassins have both pistols and knives. In Booth's case, a little 6-inch Derringer, really little so he could hide it easily, really big barrel. It Takes about 40 seconds to reload, so Booth knows he needs to get Lincoln with the first shot. He's only going to get one chance. So he's just waiting in that hallway for the line in the play. It's delivered, everybody starts laughing. Booth flings the door open, steps into the box, takes the pistol, aims it at the side of Lincoln's head from about 7 inches away, fires the pistol. The bullet enters Lincoln's skull, about 1.5 inches above the left ear, through his head, ends up just behind his right eye. It doesn't exit. Lincoln's unconscious. He slips down into Mary's arms. Booth then attempts to get from the stage, from the balcony down to the stage. One thing, though, he wasn't counting on, Major Rathbone, military man. He's going to react quickly. He moves across the box to try to stop Booth. Booth throws the pistol down, doesn't need it anymore. Out comes the knife, which he aims at the Major, who puts up his arms to defend himself, and then Booth is going to strike again. He takes that knife, aims it at Rathbone's arm. The knife blade enters the skin at the elbow. He's then going to drive it down through the muscles to the bone, and then he's going to pull it back to the shoulder. Rathbone's now severely injured, but with his other arm grabs Booth, and that's going to throw Booth off balance. And Booth has spurs on. Remember, he's going to be on horseback. So the spur gets caught in the blue Treasury flag. So that when Booth jumps, he jumps badly, and when he lands badly, and that's when we think he probably hurts his leg, possibly injuring or re-injuring it later on horseback. Hurt leg or not, though, he needs to get out of here quickly, so he immediately runs out the back door. Right? Wrong. This is Booth. There's an audience of 1,700 people. So what he does is he comes to the middle of the stage, holds up the bloody knife, and yells out, "Sic semper tyrannis." That's Latin. It means "thus be it always to tyrants." He is saying why he killed the president. Then he runs out the back, gets away just barely, but escapes. He'll be on the run for about 12 days. Eventually the army catches up with him in Virginia at a tobacco barn. They'll surround the barn. They want him to surrender. They want him for the trial. Booth, though, is having nothing to do with surrendering, so he's going to resist arrest. So the soldiers set the barn on fire. He's still not coming out, so they shoot Booth, and he'll die about 3 hours later. 9 other conspirators, 4 are hung, 4 go to jail. 1, John Surratt, escaped overseas, basically gets away with it. Meanwhile, back here, for about 30 seconds, everybody was just kind of stunned. Booth then holds up the bloody knife. At the same time, from the box, they start to yell out, "The president has been shot. Somebody please help." And then pandemonium breaks out here. You can imagine most of the 1,700 people going for the back doors at once. Probably not a pretty sight. And some of the people were pretty quick, figured it about Booth, tried to catch him. And some of the people are trying to help Lincoln. Can they get through the door? Nope. Piece of wood was still there. So Rathbone, even though he's injured, knows he needs to do something. So he's going to drag himself to that door, pull the piece of wood out, and then help will come rushing in. Among the people in this theater, there's 3 doctors. They weren't with the president. They're just here watching the play. Luckily, very good doctors. Examine him carefully. And remember, at first, what they're looking for is a knife wound, but they find a bullet wound. They determine he's probably not going to live anyway. But if they're going to do anything, the White House and the hospitals are too far. They don't really want to treat him up there in the box. So what are they going to do? So they need another plan. Over across the street, 3 boarding houses. They really wouldn't have cared which one. They're big, they're brick, they have a lot of beds. So that becomes the plan, get the president across the street. They start to take him out. Meanwhile, over at the Peterson boarding house, one of the tenants, Henry Safford, realizes what's happening, and he goes out on the steps over there. So when they take the president out, he's going to yell to them, "Bring him over here, we have a bed." Just what they needed. So up the Peterson House steps, into the middle room of the house on the first floor, Mr. Clark's room. Clark, ironically, was out that night celebrating Union victories. So his room was empty. So they take him into that room, they try to treat him. If 1800s medicine could have saved him, it would have. These are very good doctors. Lincoln's very strong. It's the only reason that he lives to 9 hours. In the end, though, they can't save him. So as the night goes on, treatment slows, and you gradually start the death watch. Lincoln's friends and family gather together, waiting for the inevitable. That occurs 7:22 Saturday morning, April 15th, 1865. Abraham Lincoln will pass away. At that point, his friend and colleague, Stanton, Secretary of War, makes the now famous remark, "Now he belongs to the ages." I'd like to thank you for listening.